this is Becca. This is going to be the third part of Chapter 1 of The Hobbit. I'm sorry that my last video got cut short so suddenly. As I explained before, I'm having some cold or sinus issues right now. So I hope you don't mind if I stop in the middle of reading at some point to drink a little water or tea. Or pause and come back to blow my nose when needed. I'm also sorry that I keep changing up how I put the view in my videos. I'm making them with my phone, and I don't really have a stand for it, so I'm sort of experimenting with how to hold the camera in a way that's comfortable for me and also gives you a decent view of the book. I didn't really like having my face on camera, as in the first video, but just tell me in the comments what you prefer, and I'll try to do it that way. I may also have to invest in some sort of stand for my phone, or MacGyver something. We'll see. So, let's get started right where we left off. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry and altogether bewildered and bewithered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he ever remembered. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarves, 4 more. And there was Gandalf behind, leaning on his stick and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he had put there the morning before. Carefully, carefully, he said. It is not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat, and then open the door like a pop gun. Let me introduce Beaver, Bofer, Bomber, and especially Thorin. At your service, said Beaver, Bofer, and Bomber, standing in a row. Then they hung up 2 yellow hoods and a pale green one, and also a sky blue one with a long silver tassel. This last belonged to Thorin, an enormously important dwarf. In fact, no other than the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, who was not at all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat with Beaver, Bofer, and Bomber on top of him. For one thing, Bomber was immensely fat and heavy. Thorin indeed was very haughty, and said nothing about service. But poor Mr. Baggins said he was sorry so many times, that at last he grunted, "Pray don't mention it," and stopped frowning. Now we are all here, said Gandalf, looking at a row of 13 hoods, the best detachable party hoods, and his own hat hanging on the pegs. Quite a merry gathering. I hope there is something left for the latecomers to eat and drink. What's that? Tea? No, thank you. A little red wine, I think, for me. And for me, said Thorin. And raspberry jam and apple tart, said Beaver. And mince pies and cheese, said Bofer. And pork pie and salad, said Bomber. And more cakes and ale and coffee, if you don't mind, called the other dwarfs through the door. Put on a few eggs, there's a good fellow, Gandalf called after him, as the Hobbit stumped off into the pantries. And just bring out cold chicken and pickles. Seems to know as much about the inside of my larders as I do myself, thought Mr. Baggins, who was feeling positively flummoxed, and was beginning to wonder whether the most wretched adventure had not come right into his house. By the time he had got all the bottles and dishes and knives and forks and glasses and plates and spoons and things piled up on big trays, he was getting very hot and red in the face and annoyed. Confusticate and be bother these dwarves, he said aloud. Why don't they come and lend a hand? Lo and behold, there stood Balin and Dwalin at the door of the kitchen, and Billy and Gilly behind them, and before they could say knife, they had whisked the trays and a couple of small tables into the parlor and set out everything afresh. Gandalf sat at the head of the party, with the 13 dwarves all round, and Bilbo sat on a stool at the fireside, nibbling at a biscuit. His appetite was quite taken away, and trying to look as if this was all perfectly ordinary and not in the least an adventure. dwarves only started to sing. Chip the glasses and crack the plates, blunt the knives and bend the forks. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Smash the bottles and burn the corks. Put the cloth and tread on the fat. Pour the milk on the pantry floor. Leave the bones on the bedroom mat. Splash the wine on every door. Dump the crogs on a boiling bowl. Pound them up with a thumping bowl. And when you've finished, if any are whole, send them down the hall to roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates, so carefully, carefully with the pins. And of course they did none of these dreadful things, and everything was cleaned and put away, safe as quick as lightning, while the Hobbit was turning round and round in the middle of the kitchen, trying to see what they were doing. Then they went back and found Thorin with his feet on the fender, smoking a pipe. He was blowing the most enormous smoke rings, and wherever he told them one to go, it went. Up the chimney, or behind the clock on the mantelpiece, or under the table, or round and round the ceiling. But wherever it went, it was not quick enough to escape Gandalf. Pop! He sent a smaller smoke ring from his short clay pipe straight through each one of Thorin's. Then Gandalf's smoke rings would go green and come back to hover over the wizard's head. He had a cloud of them out about him already, and in the dim light it made him look strange and sorcerous. Bilbo stood still and watched. He loved smoke rings, and then he blushed to think how proud he had been yesterday morning of the smoke rings he had sent up the wind over the hill. Now for some music, said Thorin. Bring out the instruments. Tilly and Gilly rushed for their bags and brought back little fiddles. Dory, Nori, and Ori brought out flutes from somewhere inside their coats. Bomber produced a drum from the hall. Beaver and Bofer went out too, and came back with clarinets that they had left among the walking sticks. Dwalin and Balin said, "Excuse me, I left mine on the porch. Just bring mine with you," said Thorin. They came back with vials as big as themselves, and with Thorin's harp wrapped in a green cloth. It was a beautiful golden harp, and when Thorin struck it, the music began all at once, so sudden and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else and was swept away into dark lands under strange moons, far over the water and very far from his hobbit hole. The dark came into the room from the little window that opened in the side of the hill. The firelight flickered. It was April, and still they played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard wagged against the wall. The dark filled all the room, and the fire died down, and the shadows were lost, and still they played on. And suddenly, first one, then another began to sing as they played, deep-throated singing of the dwarves in deep places of their ancient homes. And this is like a fragment of their song, if it can be their song without their music. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells, in places deep where dark things sleep, in hollow halls beneath the fells. For ancient king and elvish lord, there many a gleaming golden hoard, they shaped and wrought, and light they caught, to hide in gems on hilt of sword. On silver necklaces they strung, the flowering stars on crowns they hung. The dragon fire in twisted wire, they meshed the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to claim our long-forgotten gold. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and herbs of gold where no man delves. There lay they long, and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, it flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, and men looked up with faces pale. Then dragons' ire, more fierce than fire, laid low their towers and houses frail. The mountains smoked must away ere break of day to win our harps and gold from him. As they sang, the Hobbit fell in love, felt the love of beautiful things made by hands and by cunning and by magic moving through him, a fierce and a jealous love, the desire of the hearts of dwarves. Then something dookish woke up inside him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out of the window. The stars were out in a dark sky above the trees. He thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in dark caverns. Suddenly, in the wood beyond the water, a flame leapt up, probably somebody lighting a wood fire, and he thought of plundering dragons settling on his quiet hill and kindling it all to flames. He shuddered, and very quickly he was plain Mr. Baggins of Baghead, Underhill again. This is where I'm going to stop for this segment. I'm having some trouble verifying my account, so I need to keep all my videos under 15